All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:01 on February 18th, 2021. Let's do a roll call.
Councilmember Arf,
Here.
Councilmember Deutsch,
Here.
Councilmember Keisler,
Here.
Councilmember Lucchese,
Present.
Mayor Bryan.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to move forward with the flag salute. Councilman Keisler, would you assist us in the flag salute?
It'd be my honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
To the republic for which it stands,
One
one nation, under God,
nation, under
indivisible,
God,
with liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice for all.
Thank you. Wendy, could I share my screen?
We would need to make you a co-host instead of Juliana.
Okay,
Yeah,
or
that's fine.
Juliana, we could keep it with you. Just throw up the slideshow for the agenda.
Sure. Do you have a link to it?
It's the shared one we have.
Okay. Yeah, let me go grab that. Can do. All right, can you guys see it okay?
Yeah,
Yes. Thanks, Juliana.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have our special presentation for tonight. I would like a recognition of Stephen Bryan. Is Stephen on the call?
Mm-hmm. Yes, he is.
right on.
Could we unmute Stephen?
Yep, he's all good.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Can I say something quickly?
Yes.
I'm not sure what's going on. I kind of got caught off guard. Big Dave mentioned something to me last week about you guys acknowledging me, and I'm very thankful and humble about this.
Yeah,
but I can't. So, anyways.
We just would like to officially thank you for all the work and commitment you have in this community. We know the good you're doing and have done, so we wanted to publicly recognize it. This kind of is the equivalent of giving you the key to the city, so to speak. In non-COVID times, we can arrange for a physical key to be handed over. But we really do appreciate everything you've done for the city, Mr. Bryan.
Here, here.
Here, here, here. I've been working with Stephen with the community care team and with a couple of town halls on hunger over the last few years. And it's, I can't describe it in any other way than bringing up my Catholic upbringing. He's like a quote unquote priest in our city, making sure that all the folks are taken care of and their spirits are fine. So I just want to particularly thank him for all the work that I've seen him do and the spirit that he brings to the community.
And that's true in normal times, but especially this past year, where new challenges definitely faced the Community Resource Center and all of the people who rely on the Community Resource Center, and they've more than rose to the occasion in these difficult times.
When it comes to Dunsmuir and my friend Stephen Bryan, all lives mattered to that man, and he made a difference in all lives this past year for a lot of people in Dunsmuir. And for that, I'm very proud of him. Good job, Stephen.
Thank you very much. I mean, just so everybody knows, without my staff, the wonderful volunteers that we have, the city of Dunsmuir, including everybody on the council, the staff of the city, the Rotary Club of Dunsmuir, Mike Rodriguez in Parks and Recs, Karen O'Quinn in the library, Linda Sheevan, behavioral health, public health, Ray Keller, Susan Keeler, the high school, the elementary school, the sheriff's department, Paris Petrick and the Sister Media Council. I mean, I know I'm leaving people out, but without the community working together, I can't do what, and our staff can't do what we do to support the community and keep an eye and fill in the gaps where they're needed. So
That's
thank
because
you.
everybody on that list loves you.
Well, it's mutual, and I hope that well, obviously it shows, but I really care about the community, and I've grown to love Dunsmuir more than you'll ever know.
Well, thank
We're
you, and
lucky
we
to
really
have
do
you, Steve.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen. We hope to see you again when we meet in person, and we can give you something official in person there, or through City Hall.
Thank you.
Let's move forward into general public comments for tonight. So it shows on the screen there. This is a time for members of the public to address an issue that is not on the agenda or that is on the consent agenda, which is just the check registry for the last 2 weeks. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to make their statement, but if you could say your name and address prior to that, and to line up for public comment, you can either go to the participants tab and hit the raise your hand button. It will raise your hand and we'll know that you're interested in making a public comment. If you're on a phone, you can hit *9 and it will accomplish the same function. So I'll just give it a minute for people to raise their hands.
We do have one speaker ready to go. Should be Ahmet Tassi. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tassi.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. This is Ahmet Tassi. I live on 4019 Forest Lane. First of all, I would like to give my sincere condolences to the Mr. Olson's family. I'm sure you guys will be talking about it. The first thing that I would like to mention is I was wondering how City Council feel to have electric car chargers in downtown of Dunsmuir. We can spread them on Sacramento Street, Pine Street, or maybe other streets. Several of them, maybe 5 each street. There are companies out there who can set up this kind of system for free and also share the revenue with the city. Second topic that I would like to mention is the Mott property. I would like to get your attention again to start talking about building an industrial park and perhaps some affordable housing out there. As you may all know, from September till March, most of our small businesses are suffering because we don't have enough residents who are shopping in downtown. So building more affordable housing can give a little bit more boost to the small businesses in the future. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have Stephen, Stephen Bryan.
Thank you. I was technically challenged with the hands up. I just wanted to mention a couple of important things that are going on next month. Coming up on March 18th, on Thursday, March 18th, we will be doing commodities delivery again. So our volunteers help us with distributing the food out to the seniors and other residents that are part of our food distribution program with the help of GNS supplying food with the USDA program. So that'll be on Thursday, March 18th. If we get the food early, we're going to start distributing out on Wednesday, the 17th, But I just want the community to make sure they understand that we always serve our seniors first and not to worry about your food being delivered, that as soon as we get all the senior food commodities delivered, we'll resume with the rest of the community. And then also on that same day at 2 p.m. at the Dunsmuir Community Resource Center, we're hosting a community forum for behavioral health. They're looking in for input on their MHSA funding, which supports a lot of the things that we do at the Resource Center. As far as in the schools, we do girl circles and boys councils. We do mother-daughter circles, women's circles. We do parenting programs and classes at the Resource Center. We do mental health workshops. We do senior programs like Living Long and Well. So all these things are funded partially through the MHSA Act, through behavioral health in the county. But they're looking for input. If you could join us at 2 p.m. at the Resource Center, if you can't join in person, that's fine. We want to limit the amount of people that are there, but there will be a Zoom link that we would provide. Once we get that from behavioral health, we'll make sure to get that out to the public so you can join us online. We also have a community survey. If anybody's interested in that, Resource Center. It's a link online. It's a Survey Monkey link that behavioral health is asking questions about. And then finally, with the community garden in Dunsmuir, things, I know it's hard to believe today with the storm, but soon we're ramping things up and we're looking for volunteers to come and help in the garden. We have volunteer days on Friday mornings from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Just show up with a mask and gloves and any tools you want to bring. And we'd love to have your help in the garden. We're going to be getting beds ready. We're working on more vertical buildings. So it's very therapeutic to work in the garden and to give back. So we'd love for anybody that wants to help to come on down on Friday mornings from 10 to noon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me check the raise your hand function.
I don't have anybody else in line.
Yeah, okay. Seeing no others, I will now close the public comment at 6:14. And we'll move on to staff and member comments.
Mr. Mayor?
Actually, if you wouldn't mind, Big Dave, I'd like to say before we get into any further comments, I know there's a number of our sheriff's departments on the line here if they'd like to begin.
That's what I was hoping you'd start with the sheriffs and fill everybody in. Thank you.
Yes.
Yep, Sheriff LaRue, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to follow up by discussing our annual report and kind of give an update, open for any questions. I know you have a busy schedule, so I don't want to take up too much time.
What happened this morning?
What's that?
What happened this morning? That's what everybody wants to know.
Okay, so this morning I put a press release out recently, and I'll read you what that is just to keep it consistent. So on Thursday, which is today, February 18th, at about 1 a.m., the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call reporting that a male had been stabbed. Deputies arrived, and that was at 6120 Dunsmuir Avenue within minutes of the dispatch, and began providing medical assistance to the male, which included CPR. The male was identified as 44-year-old Dunsmuir resident Gregory Olson. Paramedics arrived and continued CPR. However, Gregory died on scene. Deputies were able to identify the subject who stabbed Gregory as 25-year-old Humboldt County resident Christopher Castillo, who also goes by the name of Sheba. Deputies and allied law enforcement agencies began searching the Dunsmuir area for Castillo, and the Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Unit responded to Dunsmuir, initiated an investigation into the incident. So at approximately 8 a.m., which was due to our Facebook post that we put out, an alert citizen driving by called into dispatch and advised that they saw Castillo near the Interstate 5 on-ramp near Railroad Park. Deputies responded to the area and located Castillo and placed him under arrest without incident. And then during the investigation of the incident, it was determined that a series of other calls for service that were connected had come across around 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening. Dispatch sent out deputies as well as the California Highway Patrol to respond to that location, same location, 6120 Dunsmuir Avenue. It's still an ongoing investigation as far as the other calls that occurred in that evening. Witnesses described an altercation and also some other physical fights that were occurring in that area. And at this point, we're encouraging anybody who has information regarding the calls that came in that evening and or the incident involving the stabbing to contact the Sheriff's Office dispatch, which is 841-2900, and ask to speak to the detectives. So that's the press release that we put out pertaining to the incident.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. And so if I have a few minutes, I'll go through the stats. There's a lot of them, so I know you can get a copy of this, so I don't want to belabor this, but just a couple things to note for the year. Domestic violence incidents were at 23. And, one of the things I just want to encourage is that, domestic violence is a serious crime, and oftentimes victims are silent. They don't often feel that they can approach law enforcement, and they also don't feel like they have places to go for help. There's a lot of services within the county. I always want to reiterate this, that to get the message out there that if you know people that are struggling with that to report that to the Sheriff's Office so that we can get them in contact with victim services and the Domestic Violence Crisis Center, and also do an investigation, because that's things that happen behind closed doors are often kept private, and it's just disturbing to see such a high number for for our local community of Dunsmuir. School checks, 270 for the year. Security checks, over 329. Another area too, suicide or attempts are at 10, which is staggering. Again, there is mental help available in our county, and it's another area too that I hope that we can reinforce with some positive means to get people the help that they need. It takes a big toll out on the community when we have to see the people that we care about go through those things. Over almost 200 vehicle stops that we have noted on here. So 2,587 calls for the year, and we have over 242 cases that we pulled. And with that, we have a new supervisor in Dunsmuir, and I'll just read you his brief bio. Sergeant Sam Kubowitz, maybe you've had the opportunity to meet him. He scored #1 in our sergeant testing process. He did very well. He attended College of the Siskiyous. He majored in criminal justice. He enrolled in the law enforcement training program. He was hired by the Mount Shasta Police Department. He worked there for almost 4 years, and he decided to come over to the Sheriff's Department in 2007, and he was hired full-time by us and worked on a number of patrol assignments to include headquarters area, Dunsmuir, South County, Butte Valley, Doris, and Happy Camp, which is just about every area that we have. His experience has led him to be assigned to assist the detective's office with several major investigations, and he has experience assisting the narcotics task force and also other major investigation teams throughout the county and the North State. He's been designated the officer in charge as the watch commander for many shifts as a on-duty supervisor over the years. And he's also had the honor of being a canine handler. In each of his assignments, Sam has exceeded expectations, resulting in receiving numerous commendations from citizens, allied law enforcement agencies, and supervisors. In 2015, Sheriff John Lope presented Sam with the department's Special Act of Courage Award for the arrest of 2 armed robbery suspects. As a canine handler, Sam and his partner, Pee-wee, have located over 41 pounds of methamphetamine, almost $50,000 in cash, 4 firearms, also other things, including also finding a 4-year-old boy who got lost in McLeod, including additional apprehension. So he has a partnership. For the past 13 months, before he was assigned to Dunsmuir and promoted, he was assigned as the officer in charge of Happy Camp. And during those months, Sam worked closely with the Karuk tribe and government and other community groups. And most notably, Sam served as the incident commander of the largest natural disaster in the sheriff's office history that we've responded to, and that was the Slater fire that devastated the Happy Camp community. So with that, I'm tremendously proud of Sergeant Sam Kubowitz, and I know that he will proudly serve the community of Dunsmuir. He joins us as well, and maybe just an opportunity for him to say hello to everybody, if you have time.
I have time. I just wonder if this thing's actually working.
I can
We
hear you.
hear you.
We can hear
Oh,
you.
okay. Okay. Thank you for the introduction. I'm glad to be back in the South County area. It's an easier commute for me, and I just hope that I can do as good as Lieutenant Wetstein did.
Well, welcome to the party.
Thank you, Deputy Kubowitz. We really appreciate you being on board, and we hope you integrate into our community here and learn everything there is to know. And you got some big footsteps to fill in with Lieutenant Wetstein. He was excellent, and we know you'll rise to the occasion.
Thank you.
Well, that ends my report. If I could just for a second, I do want to also say that, or thank Stephen Bryan for his efforts. I know he does a tremendous amount of work with him and his amazing team. So special shout out to him, well deserved. And our condolences do go out to the Olson. Yeah. So we're going to update you as soon as we can on that. So that's all I have to present.
Thank you. Council members, are there any further questions?
I would just like to, I'd like to thank the sheriff's office for the work they did this morning in solving and apprehending the suspect, making the streets of Dunsmuir safer. And I'm sure that all council members concur with this as we send our condolences out to the family. Our hearts go out to you guys. This is tough. And Sam, welcome to the party.
Thank you. And I don't know if you guys want to know about January stats. I have them right here in my face at my computer. Be more than happy to go over January stats. If not, we can do them next month, whatever you guys like.
We'd be very happy to hear them now.
So for the January 2021, we had 549 hours of patrol time. There was 144 calls for service. We took 15 cases. There was 10 traffic stops made, 9 citations issued, 2 arrests. Out of those 2 arrests, there was 2 felony bookings and 4 misdemeanors. 2 of the arrests were the felony warrants, and 4 were for misdemeanor citations that were cited out. There wasn't any specific area of problem. Penny's Diner was we arrested somebody there for a felony warrant. And so with the Amtrak station, as far as calls for service, there was 2 burglaries reported. One was unfounded. The other one was on Wood Street. There was only 1 theft case, no auto thefts case. There was 2 assault and batteries, 3 vandalisms, 19 school checks, and 5 disturbing the peace calls. And that's all I have for my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Nope, but thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you around Dunsmuir. And while we're all on the call, if the sheriff, yourself, Deputy Kubowitz, and myself and Big Dave are on the Public Safety Ad Hoc Committee, we like to meet quarterly. If you guys have some availability in the next month, it'd be nice to get together and meet and discuss the status of our contract and moving forward. Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Mayor.
All right, moving into further staff and member comments. City Manager Uhas, would you like to take the floor?
Sure. Okay, so I've got a number of things to go through, so be patient. There have spent over the last 2 weeks probably 5 or 6 hours either with the Biden administration folks or with the California City Sacramento Valley Division members, talking through what is already gone through the rulemaking and reconciliation process, and it's just really awaiting passage through the Senate in early March. And what this will include for the first time, and we've been asking for this for a while, is direct aid to cities and counties that have been affected by COVID. So there is $65 billion coming to state and local governments through the Biden administration. It is also this time going to cities with populations under 50,000 people. It will be apportioned by population. The language in the bill is very broad. It states that the money can be used to respond to or mitigate the public health emergency, replace revenue that has decreased, delayed, or has been lost. So that means that we can use it for TUT, we can use it to replace a decrease in property tax revenues, utility non-payment, we can use it to help small businesses. We can also use it, we can transfer some of the money depending on how much we get, which that's the part we don't know, to local nonprofits. So there is a potential if we do receive enough money to potentially help out Stephen and the Resource Center. So essentially this is going to be administered through CDBG, and I don't want anybody to panic because they can tend to be pretty slow, but they're going to act in the capacity of a pass-through agency. So it's really just a matter of that's who the money flows through the feds. So that's one, that's good news. We also have while small, we've got a small grant coming to help defray cost, our debt from the airport to the general fund of $9,000. That's by right, and it's on its way. And there's a potential that there's more coming as part of this package that will be signed in March. UP was up here over the past 2 weeks. They were comparing the drawings that were sent to their structural department and looking at the actual Mossbury Falls site and the approach to it to kind of, get a better understanding of what the drawings are showing them. So that means we're making progress on that front. Councilman Lucchese just informed me before the meeting. You remember we have an application for Prop 68 funds for the purchase of the underlying land for the children's park, as well as to replace the aging equipment out there with new ADA accessible equipment. And There are a couple technical fixes that we need to make, but everything else is on track. And so it looks like that's going through. We have received solid waste responses, which staff is reviewing right now. We've received two, one from Smith and one from Clemens. And let's see, wrapping this up, we've got an inquiry about whether or not we should be holding railroad days in June. My personal feeling is that I think we're going to be pretty far along by the end of summer, given the way we've ramped up on vaccinations. But just bring it to this body to get the read from everybody else and where you all sit on whether it's a little premature on railroad days or whether we want to see if we wait a month or two and get a better understanding about how vaccines are rolling out in Siskiyou County before we make a decision. So that's what I've got.
Thank you, City Manager. Is our Finance Director on the call?
Yep, Blake should be able to unmute himself.
Yes, thank you all. Hello. I don't have anything to report. Thank you very much.
Hi, Blake.
Right, and then, thank you, Blake. I see that City Planner Richard Tinsman is on the call as well. If you have anything, Richard?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Wendy, do you have any member comments or staff comments?
Nope, nothing this week.
All right, thank you so much. I'll move on to council comments. Councilman Deutsch, would you like to begin?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
I want to start off by giving an update on a project that I've been pushing through the local transportation commission. For those who don't know, the county has a local transportation commission, 6 commissioners. I was voted onto that by the local mayors around the county back in 2018. And since then, I've been pushing a vision of a new way of looking at public transportation, basically the stage in the South County. And the idea is to transfer from having a stage bus that moves through each of the cities as it works its way from Castella all the way to Yreka, stopping at different locations in each city, into an express bus that will ride up and down the interstate and have transfer points for little buses or little shuttles, if you will, whatever the size is determined to be, that would run up and down each of the cities and around the cities. So for instance, in Dunsmuir, I imagine a shuttle that would run all the way from North Siskiyou Avenue up there at the interchange and run all the way down to Castella and run back and forth all day long, and being able to make it so that any citizen would be able to walk a few blocks and catch a ride and not have to worry about driving. The same thing with Mount Shasta and McLeod and Weed and Lake Chastina. Now, the good news is that I just reached out to the head of the company that is supporting us, Jeff Schlein, and wanted to see how that is moving along. And it turns out that we're in a position right now where the LTC is hiring a company that designs bus routes as a business, and they're going to be looking into this. And I had a really good conversation both with Jeff and with City Manager Uhas, because that's his background. And so when it comes time for that study and that process to look at it, I think we have a real opportunity to change the nature of how we move around publicly in the lower area. And it also has a unique opportunity in the sense that when each of the cities down south puts on some sort of an event and different people are in different hotels in different cities, you can restructure it so all of a sudden people are being shuttled to Dunsmuir for one of the events there, and then over to McLeod for a mushroom or whatever it is. So that's something I'm pushing, and I think it'll be coming along, and I just wanted to share that with you all. Thanks.
Hold on, Bruce.
Councilman Deutsch. Councilman Arth, would you like to share?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the public, colleagues. Since we didn't have our first meeting this month, I have 4 items. And of course, we haven't met since we had the significant snowstorm, but I do want to thank and congratulate the Dunsmuir Public Works Department. As a senior citizen that can only shovel so much snow, I think our staff did a yeoman's job of trying to keep not only the major thoroughfares open in the city of Dunsmuir, but assisting individual citizens as best they can. It does occur to me that I hope before we get to next winter that we can reinstate a program that Mr. Rubino and I worked on where we station 1 or 2 snow blowers in the fire department. And after we have a big snow, this sort of flows into the business improvement district, but we have an arrangement where there are contractors, hopefully high school students, that will fairly promptly clear the sidewalks, at least in the historic district, because it is somewhat dangerous to have children and old people walking out on Dunsmuir Avenue because the sidewalks are impassable. I did read the interview in the Dunsmuir News by Mayor Matthew Bryan. I congratulate him on the article, and I can only contrast it to the earlier article with Mayor Talavero and the city of Weed. And I think we really need to push ourselves as a city and a council. It's good to have a goal of getting the Mossbury Trail done, but has been elusive for too many years. We really need to get the Mossbury Trail done for all the reasons mentioned in the article. And I think we need to spend much more time with a firm schedule on the empty and abandoned building issues. Most importantly, we need a vision and a plan. 3 of us are entering our 3rd year of service, and we have yet to reach out to citizens, get their input, get the input of council members, staff, other community leaders, so that we are all on the same page as to what needs to be done and when. My 3rd item is I really hope we return to face-to-face meetings. And with regard to the meeting that we did not hold earlier this month, I would like to propose that, Mr. Mayor, we set a special meeting that has as its sole agenda simply discussing with the city manager and the members of the city council, what is it we're holding ourselves accountable to during your term for 2021? I think as we come out of the COVID crisis, economic development and taking care of our citizens is really going to require active rather than passive oversight. Finally, I know we're all aware that we lost the last branch bank in the city of Dunsmuir. US Bank was featured in yesterday's newspaper as leaving our community in spring. And this hurts as a disadvantaged community, as a community with a number of small businesses. Not all of us are so sophisticated that we can do all of our work on the computer. And I hope as we discuss economic development later in the meeting, we could start to address the loss of banking services in our community and what we can do about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Arth. Councilman Keisler, would you like to share some comments?
Yes, thank you. Peter, I have to concur with you on that. I've been approached by numerous business owners and that are worried about, they get their money and they walk down to the bank. So now we don't have no bank and they're going to have to transport their money out of our city. So that was a big thing that was brought to me today. And to tell you the truth, it was from Jeannie from the pizza factory. They're very concerned. They'd like to have a bank. And so that's something maybe we could discuss in the future. Again, I want to thank you, Stephen. You've proven yourself to be a true hero. I mean, you've stepped up and you've helped a lot of people when they've had nothing. And I'm speaking from experience. You've provided fuel to people that needed it. You've provided food to people that needed it. You've provided clothing. You're my hero, bro. And thank you. And we're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you sitting in our resource center. And thank you and all your volunteers too. Yes, it is a sad day in Dunsmuir, and my condolences go out to the Owens family. I have no words. I'd like to thank sheriffs for making sure that suspect is off our streets, and once again, we are safe. Sam, I said it once. Welcome to the party. I'd like to know about this Pee-wee partner of yours, because I'm broke. I could use some money. So if he wants to help me sniff some money out, that'd be kind of cool. Jeremiah, you made a little mention about the domestic violence information earlier in the meeting. Thank you for that. We need to have more information for people out there. And I'm pretty sure that if anybody's listening and they have problems, they can contact any of us, city council members, a sheriff. If you got a problem, we're here to help. Just reach out. Let's see. Okay, I got a lot of notes. One thing that I want everybody to know, there's been a lot of controversy about needles and trash at the bus stop at Shasta Retreat. The bus stops are owned and operated by the Rotary, basically me. And I went to Rotary this morning and I asked if we could dismantle and relocate that bus stop, which is what is going to happen. We're taking down the bus stop at Shasta Retreat. So we're not going to have no longer junkies or thieves or just scandalous people hanging out in there. But thank Rotary for making that happen and making our town a little bit more safer. And the city park is open, in case anybody didn't know that. They did some work down there. The city park is open. And the last part of my notes is I've been on this council for a long time, and it's been my honor to work with different people, but it is a really good feeling when you are part of a team and we have a cohesive council. And when we start talking about the economic development, I would like us all to remember that we're all doing it for our town, and we still have to work together and make things happen. I just want to put that in all of our thoughts. We're all friends. We all work together. And this has been one of the best councils that I've seen since I've been doing this. And I thank you all for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Keisler. Councilwoman Lucchese.
Thank you. Excuse me. One thing I'd like to add to Councilmember Deutsch's comments is the Local Transportation Commission is updating their regional transportation plan. And so they do have a website. I'll go grab it and put it in the chat after I'm done making my comments. But the county is looking for people to take their survey and give input on transit service, on bicycle infrastructure within the county. So if you're interested in those things, please feel free to take a look at that website and take that survey. They would really appreciate that information. Other than that, I've just been, as City Manager Yuha said, I just heard back about the Prop 68 grant. So just waiting to make sure that gets done properly. And then I've just been looking at the grant lists that are available right now that are opening up to see if we have any projects that can qualify for those. There's always grants available, but it's always hard to find one that's going to fit some of the projects that are ready to go for that. Other than that, the only update on the Moss Spray Falls project is Union Pacific is moving through their review of the plans. The Trails Association and I had a phone conversation the other day about getting other features planned out in terms of the parking and amenities area. So we are trying to put something together to hopefully bring back and start looking for grant funding to do the planning and engineering for some of those changes to support that trail once it goes in. But other than that, I have no other updates.
Thank you, Councilwoman Casey. I would just like to encourage everyone to have patience with where we're at kind of societally right now with the pandemic. I think we're, getting close to move forward to a point where we can go out and support our local businesses and safely. And I know it's been a long winter, but I would encourage everyone to look forward to the spring and the summer. It's going to be here before we know it. And we should have a really good year this year. So let's look forward to the future. Let's move forward to our approval of the minutes, or committee reports, sorry, committee reports. Were there any committees that met in the interim?
Yes. So the Finance Committee met twice in the interim. So Big Dave and I got a education from Blake, Len, and Mario, and Mike Delfano. We joined the committee and I was appointed the chair for the Finance Committee. So that was really nice. But we went over the audit in 2 meetings to make sure that we were comfortable with that. And the Finance Committee is recommending the actions up to City Council. So we should have that at the next meeting to accept that audit. And now we are working on reviewing the possible budget adjustments for the mid-year budget adjustments. So we did that at our last meeting for part of the meeting, and then we will do another one here in the next week or so, or next week or two, to continue to look at those budget adjustments and make sure that our 2-year budget is flowing well, I guess is a good way of putting it. Sorry. I've been talking a lot this week, so words are escaping me, but thank you.
I like that, educated. I've been educated.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Were there any other committees that met?
Councilmember Arth has a question.
Yes, Councilman Arth.
Well, it's actually a comment as a former member of the Finance Committee. And in the last meeting for the mayor and myself, we did receive the preliminary results of the audit by CPA Charlie Pillen. And my notes say there were 7 recommendations or items that Charlie thought needed addressing. And 2 of them are time sensitive. That is, in 2021, our loan committee is not properly constituted to meet grant requirements. And apparently all of the leases that the city has that are longer than 1 year need to be reviewed and conformed to whatever has changed in the world of finances. But one of the things that I thought was most compelling amongst his 7 recommendations is his advice that as a city, and this flows exactly into Mario Rubino's comments at our last meeting, the public and the members of the council that are not on the Finance Committee are underinformed as to budget issues before the city. So Charlie's recommendation was at least once a month, there is an agenda item to acquaint the public and the members of the council that aren't on finance as to if it's good news, good news. If it's bad news, it's bad news. But this, as the new chair and vice chair get acquainted with the number of balls in the air, all 3 of the enterprise funds have fairly short-term issues. The airport is our longstanding white elephant to be addressed. And if we're all going to be on the same page and if we're going to promote economic development, the communication and the awareness around budget issues needs to be a lot better. So I hope all 7 of the recommendations, when the audit is presented to us publicly, that those are addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And Julianne, if I would, I'd just like to bring up the airport committee. Julianne and I have talked, and we are going to reach out and create a meeting for the airport committee. But I'd like to point out that the Albatross is bringing in $3.2 million. The white elephant, as you call it, is bringing in $3.2 million for a whole new runway. And at the same time, we're looking at a report that says because of the airport, the white elephant, we may be able to bring in a hub for FedEx or UPS that could bring in as much as $3 million revenue a year. So I just want to let you know that the airport is alive and well. It's not a white elephant. And
Well,
we're going to be meeting with the pilots to talk about it. Thank you.
But the committee did not meet.
No, we're going to
As
meet.
committee
Just
reports
reporting.
go. In the future,
Mr.
if
Mayor.
we could keep discussions of committees that didn't meet away from committee reports. I know lots said. The airport is legitimately brought up in the audit, and it relates just to some of that. But I would like to, yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the short-term rentals committee met.
Yeah.
And I don't have my notes on me. I left them in my folder on the job site. So I apologize for that. Out of that meeting, I can tell you that I was appointed the chair and that with Rico's help, we are moving forward. I look forward to bringing you back more information at the next meeting.
The meeting was largely informational. We kind of overviewed the draft rules and guidelines, and we look forward to digging in a little deeper at the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, I don't believe we had any other committees that met, unless I'm mistaken.
Nope, you're not.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to let you and Big Nave know that I did talk to Devin Warner, and she was very apologetic about missing the short-term rental committee meeting. She's still undergoing her therapy for her cancer bout, but she has reviewed everything and is looking forward to participating in the next meeting.
We're very glad to hear that, and our thoughts and prayers are with Ms. Warner.
Devin.
All right, let's move forward to approval of the minutes for the January 21st meeting. I guess before, well, I guess, are there any questions regarding the minutes?
There are two on page 5 of the minutes. Well, page 5 of our agenda packet, in the middle of the page, must recluse, R-E-C-L-U-S-E oneself. That should be recuse, R-E-C-U-S-E. And on page 7, item 11, new business, there's sort of an incomplete note on the finance committee appointment. It just says reminder that Rubino, and that's the end of the phrase. So just a couple of cleanups.
All right, in addition to that, not that
I'll
I'm,
make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
excuse me, Big Dave. Prior to that, I'd like to catch one more thing. I think it's just a clerical error, but I am listed as absent from the meeting. Sadly, I was unable to attend, but in all of the votes, I'm listed as a no instead of an absent. So if we could amend that as well, so it's consistent.
Oh, yeah.
I voted for you, Mr. Mayor. I hope you like it.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Against? Motion carries unanimously. Or I'm not able to vote, one abstention. So then, concluding approval of the minutes, we can move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda today just has one item on it, the check registry from January 16th through February 12th, 2001.
Make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
All right, there's a
I'll
motion.
second.
Give the second to Councilwoman Juliana. Motion and a second. All those are in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right, go to item 9. We have no public hearing this evening, so we'll continue to item 10, old business. Let's begin with item A, the historic district bid topic. We were discussing it, I believe, the meeting before last. I believe Councilwoman Casey has prepared a report for us, and if you'd like to introduce the topic.
Yeah, just give me one sec. Cool. Need to open up the agenda packet so I can actually read. All right, thank you very much. So we were discussing the downtown improvements, and we're discussing a business improvement district and the different pieces around that. So the report starts on page 12 of the City Council agenda packet. And basically what we talked about at the first January meeting was a desire for preserving the historic nature of the district, improving buildings and public spaces, maintaining high quality buildings that have been already improved, developing design guidelines to keep the building facades and new buildings within historic architecture, whatever that may be, addressing parking issues, marketing the downtown, developing streetscape fixtures like benches, historic lighting, trash cans, other things that we'll need throughout time, enforcement of agreed upon architectural standards, and graffiti removal and general cleanup. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do this, but the majority of these types of needs and wants are covered by what's called a business improvement district, which is a geographic area that can assess properties within the district for specific purposes like beautification, marketing, property enhancement. And I believe, I don't think I have it in here. I did have an attachment that I was going to share with everyone that basically just outlines different business improvement districts within California. So a business improvement district really can be any size or any geographic area. It does not need to be contiguous in the state of California based on some of the rules that I've found, but they do have to have a similar set of rules, and it has to go through a voting process. So there's two different types of bids. There's public and nonprofit. I mainly am going to cover the public bid. I have less experience in the nonprofit world, but City Manager Uhas does have some experience and can jump in if that's something of interest. But so Assembly Bill 944 governs, how public bids are put together. And generally, the quick and dirty version of this is that 50% plus one of the property owners and or business owners of an area can create a district or request to create a district at any time. So it's like basically setting up, your own little sub-jurisdictions. So you have to have at least more than 50% of the people who are going to be taxing themselves to come in for, basically bring a petition to the City Council. So you can do business owners and property owners, or you can do one or the other. It just kind of depends on how you want to manage that area, what you want to achieve, and how you're going to be assessing fees. So that's kind of the main advantage of doing a business improvement district is one, you can set regulations and rules for how you'd like the district to be managed, but you can also assess yourselves within the district. So you do have to prepare a management plan. So I've kind of outlined the statutory requirements of what that management plan has to have. As you can see, it's a pretty extensive list. The other big thing that has to happen is for a successful bid creation or amendment, you have to really work with the business owners and property owners to define what those rules they're going to be okay with and how they'd like to assess themselves and the level of that, because they're the ones voting to institute this. And so they really have to be heavily involved or have to lead the process going forward. So after we get presented a petition with a district plan, we can review that district plan and make amendments, but it has to be mutually agreed upon by the petitioners. So city council can't necessarily go in and dictate an excessive amount of rules or dictate the type of assessment unless that petitioning body is in favor of that. Because again, if you go to the vote, those petitioners, if they're not in agreement, you're not going to move through the process. So once there's a plan, there's a petition, the city council prepares a resolution stating their intent to adopt the district, and the resolution has to have certain things written within that. And then assessments can actually be imposed based on a number of different things. It can be done. So the city of Mount Shasta has a business improvement district, which was originally called their parking district. It is now the Downtown Enhancement District, but how they ended up assessing themselves back in the 60s and 70s when they put that in place was they charge $18 per minimum parking space. So each use within the downtown has a minimum parking amount that they have to meet per an ordinance of the city. And because these downtown businesses can't provide on-site parking, they pay every slot that they have, the $18 per slot. So if you have a restaurant that has seating for 50 people and you're required to have at least 45 parking spaces and you can't provide any of those, you would be assessed the $18 per those slots. And that would be used to develop parking lots. And that was the specific version of the downtown district for the city of Mount Shasta. And again, you know, I do have, curious if I can find it. But the table that I found that kind of outlines the different bid structures can give you a really good idea of, you know, the different types of things that are in there. You can have bids that are a couple thousand parcels, or you can have bids that are, you know, 4 to 6 parcels. So it really is, it doesn't have to match the historic district geography. It could include other businesses. It could include less businesses, depending on who's interested in the program. And so again, you know, we have to go through the assessment. In most cases, if you're doing improvements for beautification or property improvements, you may want to do an assessment that's linked to the property value. So possibly a 0.01% of property value pays into the district every year, or you can do a per square footage based on different types of uses like retail or restaurants, having a certain one pay more or less than another, depending on what you are attempting to do with that bid. So again, I just outlined this whole process and the different sections that they are under, and then it has to be filed with the county assessor's office, and it is recorded to the different deeds that it is in a special district. So the biggest thing is you do need to have the business owners on board and kind of moving this process. So for nonprofit bids, basically it's a very similar situation. So it would be considered an owners association, and the process would not involve the city council or city resources. And so I did have a League of California Cities creating and operating a nonprofit organization. If a nonprofit bid is something that the businesses are interested in or property owners, they can start that process themselves. And actually that might be more flexible for them to do because it does not involve city ordinance or city involvement. So there's a couple, there's some pros and cons there. The pro with the public bid is that the city collects that money and does the projects and allows that to go out. So one of the big things in the discussion is this is going to be a pretty extensive process. I don't know if we have a budget available to do this at the moment. City council would have to take a look at the budget and find money to be able to do this. And I don't believe that the city manager or our contract planner, Rico Tinsman, have the available time right now to do this type of project. In most cases, when setting up a bid, a lot of cities will hire an outside contractor to do that. And I think that would be probably the best option here, because that outside contractor is going to have a lot more knowledge and ability to set this up quickly, because they're going to be able to move through different case studies and different types of bid formations that work, and they'll have the expertise to do that. But again, the big concern with this is the extensive nature of the project. And we would have to probably obtain a grant to be able to fund a public bid. So, and I believe, in most cases, from my personal perspective, I'd be supportive of a nonprofit bid, and that would probably be an easier and quicker option for the businesses in the downtown. So, do you have any questions?
Thank you. What would be the next steps if this business owners or property owners were interested in the nonprofit option? Would they just begin organizing and trying to find the funds to come up with some of these requirements?
Yeah, so basically what they would do is create a nonprofit organization. So any interested individuals can, and the nice thing about the nonprofit version is it doesn't have to necessarily be towards business owners or property owners in that case. It could just be, a different style of nonprofit if they'd like to do that. But City Manager Uhasso's muted, but he's available to maybe address the nonprofit side a little bit more.
So the nonprofit side, a couple things. It is a lot more flexible. It isn't subject to the same level of legal scrutiny in terms of the requirements to set it up. It isn't held to the same, strict structure that a public, bid would be under. It also has the advantage of having a nonprofit status, and really it's very flexible in terms of how you'd want to set it up. But in terms of the elements itself, having somebody that directs the bid, typically what I've seen in both cases is there's an executive director that's appointed as the head of the bid and does all, in a nonprofit case, collects all the money and comes up with the initiatives. There's usually a board associated with it and figures out how they want to go about spending the money. And it can be as simple as, how do we want our facades to look? How do we want to target specific folks for outreach, for economic development? Who do we want to bring into town? And get as elaborate as bringing in enough money that you were paying money or soliciting donations for matching street furniture and historic lighting, and you can get really creative on it. But I've had quite a lot of experience on the nonprofit side of things, especially working in New York City. But I find the nonprofit approach is much more nimble, and frankly, it's just, you can make it as big as you want, or as elaborate as you want, and you can scale it to your need.
Question.
Yes.
What general number are we talking about? Just a rough figure. If you were a business in a let's say a public and then in a nonprofit, what kind of money are we talking about on an annual basis? Range of what they would be paying to be part of this.
Let me take a look. Sorry, go ahead.
That if you're going the nonprofit route, and I know less about California's regulations on this, but it really comes down to how ambitious that bid is and what the direction is set by that executive director of the bid. And so they lay out what their plan is for that year and what they want to accomplish and what they want to tackle, and then come up with a budget based on that.
Interesting. Nice chart.
Yeah, so here's the chart I was hoping to have attached, but you can kind of see different districts, their annual budgets. So again, the Arts District of Los Angeles, which just does cleaning and security, collects about $1.1 million. And I did take a look. Their number of properties is around 250. So you can kind of do the math from there, how they assess that from 250 properties, which is kind of a high figure. But then you have some that are pretty low. So about 75,000 for about 26 properties. and the different years and what they do. So, I mean, it really is for the cost per individual in this. It's really just going to kind of depend on what people are comfortable with. I would assume the business owners and property owners in downtown Dunsmuir are not going to want to assess themselves up to 1.1 million. But you can see here, the Apple Valley one has a $200,000 annual budget, and they have 315 properties. So that's probably a much more doable ratio for them. So it is really customizable to whatever people are comfortable with. And like I said, you can see here, Central Market does economic development and ambassadors who help them clean and market the Central Market area. There's a couple more different ones here. There's some that pay for transportation. So here in Emeryville, it's $4,678 for a $3.4 million. So it really is very customizable for both the nonprofit and public side. But as City Manager Juhas said, the city side is much more finely regulated and would require a lot more strict statutory requirements for what's in the management plan, how those funds are assessed. Those funds would be audited every year. It would basically be a new enterprise account if we did that. So yeah.
And if I can add kind of an overarching comment about this, I think the bid is a great idea. I think, given that we've had direction from our city attorney about enforcing the vacant and distressed building ordinance, we're getting to a point now where we're hearing that anybody that wants to be vaccinated will be vaccinated by the end of the summer. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But what I'm seeing is the first thing we need to be doing as we're getting closer to summer is actually start enforcing that ordinance once we get the go ahead. And I assume that's coming within the next, 2-3 months. Enforce that vacant and distressed building ordinance, get some momentum going and getting a few more businesses in here, and then work on some improvements to some facades, which we have some money for. And then when we've got some life on the streets, as opposed to boxes in windows, kind of self-storage on what should be viable businesses, get some that momentum rolling, and then that's the time for us to be looking at the idea of a bid.
Oh, thank you. That's very helpful. Are there any more questions for City Manager or Councilwoman Lucchese?
I have comments after public comment.
All right. I'll now open no more questions. Now open the topic to public comments. It'll be the same as before. You give your name, address, and you can be allowed up to 3 minutes. Please go to the participants tab and click the raise your hand button. Or if you're on the phone, hit *9 and it'll accomplish the same thing.
I do not have anyone with their hand raised.
All right, there's still no one. I'll now close the public comment on item 11A. Now let's move to item B, CDBG coronavirus.
Wait a minute, you
Mr.
guys.
Mayor?
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, comments.
Comments, yes.
Council.
Yes, Councilman Arth, would you like to begin the comments on item A?
Well, I would, and I asked to hear from the public because I look at the list of 20 participants, and other than Mr. Tashi, it appears the business community is entirely missing from the discussion we're having this evening, and that's the biggest problem. I am grateful to the city manager and council member Lucchese for getting us this far, but really we are talking about if Dunsmuir is going to have an economic future. Our downtown still has a lot of empty buildings with no businesses, no employees, no revenue. And for my 12 years being in this community and trying to emphasize the importance of our historic district, again, if Ron McLeod were here, he would say our historic district, which is coterminous pretty much with our business district, is suffering. So I favor the public bid. It says at the end of this memo that one of the options is to choose to ignore this topic. And I think that's a really bad idea. I think, Mr. Mayor, that you and the city manager need to figure out how to meet and actually get feedback from the businesses that are still alive in our city ASAP in the next 60 days before we move into the busy season that starts around the end of April. Funding is a problem. I say funding is not a problem. If we're doing particularly well with short-term rentals, then why don't we make an appropriation of TOT revenues to get the consultant or the contractor that Juliana mentioned to actually work with the business owners. And I, to start, would favor making the bounds of the bid coterminous with the business, or excuse me, with the historic district. The big enchilada in this matter is the Travelers Hotel. The parking issues, the amenities. If you're going to be buying or renting a place in the Travelers Hotel, you would like to have a nice downtown to walk around in. If you're going to be renting a room at the Mossbury Hotel, you'd like a nice town to walk around in. And it's not going to happen through the city. It's not going to happen through the planning district. And anybody that thinks the businesses can voluntarily do this on a private nonprofit basis, if that was a viable alternative, it would have happened by now. So I'm appreciative. I agree with every one of the goals on page 12. All of them are important and they absolutely are congruent with the historic district ordinance and the empty and vacant building ordinances that we've already adopted. But the city has to help, or else we're going to lose even more businesses and more buildings. And so I hope we move forward, most importantly, to engage the business community, what is left of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Arth. Councilman Keisler, I believe you had comments as well.
No, I just wanted to make sure that you were listening to Peter had a comment.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from councilors?
I have a comment on that. So my preference on the item is to recommend tabling the item until we can either acquire a grant or determine stable funding. The other option is, again, one of the issues we're going to come into is I don't have a cost estimate for what this type of work is going to be. So instead of sitting down and saying we're going to allocate money for this, I think it would be smarter to go out for a request for quote or a request for proposal, just to get a ballpark of how much money this is actually talking about. I mean, again, we're not talking about a couple $1,000s. We're possibly talking about $50,000 to $80,000, depending on the extensive, work the city council would want to do. So I think, before we start allocating money and spending it on something like this, instead of focusing on other needs. And again, the city manager has priorities that we've assigned and that he's moving forward with. So I think either doing a request for a proposal, or my preference would be to table until we can get grant funding or identify a solid funding source would be my preference.
I move we so table.
Well, I have before we get to that, if you don't mind, I have a couple comments on this topic as well, and just a couple questions as well. One, if it were a nonprofit, could it be an existing nonprofit, or does it have to be a newly formed one in the bid process or becoming a bid?
My understanding is you could repurpose a nonprofit, but you would have to redo it. You might have to check, what type of nonprofit status it's allowed to have. And then you'd have to reconfigure the management documents of that nonprofit. But I mean, again, setting up a nonprofit isn't super hard. You just have to go through the motions and do the filing. Really, the hard part is going to be organizing everybody and figuring out how you're going to assess yourselves and what your rules are going to be.
Yeah, you could repurpose a nonprofit, but you'd have to change, a lot of the paper, but you'd have to change your mission statement and lay that out specifically what you plan to accomplish and not blur it with, topics that aren't related. Otherwise, you can be by the state, which I've seen happen a lot.
Okay, yeah, if you like say run an art museum or some other mission as well as the bid, even though you have the volunteer base, you need a separate entity. Okay,
exactly.
That makes sense. So then I guess my general comments are either, it looks as if this is exactly what our little downtown needs. More revenue specifically tied to preserving and improving both the appearance of our lovely little historic downtown and the economic viability of our business district. I kind of tend to agree with our city manager's comments that, we will be in the right place for this fairly soon. My biggest concern, and I think, before we move forward with any serious efforts to move on this, is to build a basis of support now. So I tend to agree with Councilman Arth's statements that, we need to find a way to communicate with our actual business owners now. And, I think the legwork for getting something like this off the ground would be, public comment 25 deep of people who have thoughts on this and what they think the importance of it would be. Because even if we spend the money to try to set up the public option, if we don't get 50% plus one to go on board with it at any amount, then it won't even happen. So I think that needs to be what comes first in any event.
Is that what it is? 50% plus one?
To get a public bid, yes.
All right. Well, Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Do we have a mission statement on our historic district, or are we rewriting one?
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, you take the floor.
Yeah, so Dave, the mission statement would be if you're doing a nonprofit. So the current historic district is an ordinance, and there is a purpose statement for the ordinance, which would be the equivalent to a mission of a nonprofit.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Now, if Councilman Deutsch, I believe you were making a motion.
Yes, I'd like to move to table this until the city is ready to bring it back up.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. I would like to propose an amendment to that. In addition to tabling, how difficult would it be to get some rough idea of what an outside company or consulting firm would cost to do this? Because I think that missing piece of information might give us a better, benchmark of what we need to achieve to get this up and running.
Or if it's even feasible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What we can do. Yeah. Go ahead, Todd.
My 2 cents is that if you brought somebody in to give you an accurate estimate, they may not even take the project on until we have more folks that could even sign on. And that really comes down to see the light at the end of the tunnel of the coronavirus, get the okay from the city attorney, start moving people that have been just holding on to empty buildings, get some forward momentum. And we've got some more businesses that are moving, then pull in somebody to get an estimate on forming it, and then we can rock and roll from there.
Okay.
Yeah, the only other thing I can recommend is I can take a look at a couple of other planning agencies and just kind of ask around to people that I know who would be able to do that. Just tapping them. And then there's a couple of cities, just, a preliminary search. A couple of cities are looking for bid consultants or have been looking for bid consultants. So I could give them a call and just ask, how much they anticipate to spend.
And
yeah, that'd be excellent.
Firms that can do this kind of work, and they'll give us We just got to get to the right place.
Yeah, in my mind, the whole reason to table is to get all this information together. It's not to put it off, but to give us time to put this together and then bring it back when it's a good time.
Rally the troops. Yep.
All right.
Great.
And then, I think all counselors in your interactions with the business owners, and hopefully they increase as the year continues, keep in mind that this is going to be, the ongoing conversation, especially if we're looking at a public option, where we're going to assume that that's what they want, when we should really listen to them in this regard. But okay, there's a motion to table and a second. Councilman Deutsch,
Aye.
Councilman Arth, Councilman Arth.
Oh, let's make sure he's not. Oh, he has his hand. Oh, he was muted.
Councilman Arth.
My vote is a no, and my comment is you're speculating on what the businesses in Dunsmuir would like on this matter without talking to them.
I was imploring all of our counselors to talk with them individually. All right, Councilman Keisler.
Well, yeah, let's table the item until we have an opportunity to talk to those. Come on, Peter.
All right, Councilwoman Lucchese.
Aye.
All right, and myself is also an aye. Motion carries 4-1. Moving on to item B, CDBG coronavirus round 2 and 3. City Manager Juhas, would you like to introduce?
Sure. Actually, I'm going to have Blake take this one on because he has been dealing with socioeconomic development mostly on this piece. Should probably see if he's muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm getting there. There's Blake.
All right, thanks y'all. Okay, so this piece can be very quick. There was going to be a quick turnaround on the rounds 2 and 3, but there has been a deadline extension. So there's actually no action item necessary on any of this. So I can do a quick update on kind of the broad CDBG in general. And I'll do that quickly. And if anybody wants to stop me and just say, let's move on, that's fine with me per timing. I did want to point out that Alex McBride is actually on the call as well. So if there are some questions, feel free to ask her. She's been awesome in this whole process. So moving right along then, wanted to start with the 1920 program. We've applied and we're waiting to hear any day now. So that's one section. Then CV1, so CDBG coronavirus round 1, we have submitted, and we're also waiting to hear on that, but there has been a deadline extension on that one as well for a couple of different reasons, which I can kind of get into in a second, leading to coronavirus rounds 2 and 3, which is what you actually have in the packet. So just going through that briefly, I'm on page 16 of the packet. And going through my notes, we've got, so we have about 219,000 that the city can go for. There's a couple different options and programs that we can go forward with, and I've listed those there. So we have a library roof, food bank, utility bills, high-speed internet, and then some other program. There's also micro enterprise again, but I just want to point those out because we will be bringing a resolution to City Council if we do want to keep going forward with coronavirus rounds 2 and 3. And due to time, I'll just cut it off there so that we can move on, unless you do have any questions or want to know more, and I'm happy to talk. But
Are there any questions for Finance Director?
I'd like us to apply for everything that we could possibly get, even if the city of Dunsmuir could get food stamps. You know what I mean? We're broke.
Yeah, and that is a good point, Big Dave. We have the option potentially, we're looking at saying we want 219,000 for this program or that program or this other program. And then in the future, being able to decide how we want to exactly split the actual funds.
So what you're saying is we have to designate a program. That's what we're going for, this program. Is that right?
In essence, yes, but we can do multiple programs. So if you do want to scroll to that actual resolution,
Yeah, I've seen it. So I can have, this is what the city of Dunsmuir is going after. I'm going after this, this, and this.
Right.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really
We're-
cool.
We're still checking on the viability of that option within the resolution, but that is a potential possibility.
Well, that would be outstanding.
Yeah. Otherwise, we will just pick one program and go forward with that. But
Thank you for your work on this, Blake.
Just a couple comments on this. So the coronavirus one funds have been, I think the terminology has been recommended for contracting. So it's in the works and is coming shortly. They're getting to the point of where this money can be spent. The part of this is, clearly we're setting a micro enterprise loan program up, storefront improvements, tenant improvement grants. But we've got some flexibility in how we can use those funds too, which creates different tranches and different ways that we apply for this, including things like improvements to public infrastructure, improvements to housing stock. That also allows us to, look at structural improvements for city-owned property as long as it isn't City Hall or the Fire Hall. There's a lot of avenues.
Todd,
and
I don't mean to interrupt, but there's like a lot of
you sound shitty
with your microphone. Yeah, maybe if there's something you could adjust, perhaps. It sounds like there's something falling on your microphone or something of that nature.
Maybe it's my tinfoil hat. The other part I just wanted to mention, this isn't related to this exactly, but one of the things that has been on my mind and I want to get to is, we have a well that seems to be viable, that was owned by the Forest Service up at the bottom of the hill at the airport. And I would like community development block grant funds aren't going to pay for this. Again, we're all overloaded in what we're trying to take on, but one of the things that's on my to-do list is looking at an economic development administration loan that would help us pull water and sewer up to the 11-acre parcel site by the airport, so it makes that that large land area basically shovel ready, because nobody is going to develop that site unless they can make it pencil. And one way to help developers make that pencil is if
Water
they
and sewer.
run sewer and water up there. Anyway, enough said.
Good point.
As far as that project goes, could that be included in these rounds of CDBG, or just potentially future programs we could run?
It's a different organization. They tend to have a lot more money. And the thing that we have going for us, when I was in the city of Beaverton, city of Beaverton's median income is $80,000. So clearly not a low income area, but we found a pocket within the city that qualified for sort of low income. And we were able to make the case to rebuild a bridge, and that's millions of dollars. The EDA is looking for communities like ours that has a preponderance of folks that are truly low income. And the idea of stimulating growth in jobs that, to a significant degree is a perfect fit for what EDA does. And this is something that is right in their wheelhouse. It's just the problem is the grants are extensive. There's a lot of legwork involved. And then if you're awarded, which I think we will be, get through the grant process, the administration of it is, really, really hefty. But that's not a non-starter. If we get awarded a grant that's high enough, there are administrative costs that come with that grant where we could hire somebody to do the work from the outside.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that, just to kind of paint the picture with that well up there. A while back, Caltrans, which used to use that well to provide water across the way to the way station, gave that to the county. And that was about 3 years ago. And Ed Valenzuela and I have been just waiting for the opportunity to be able to get that into our hands. That's been the goal of both Ed and myself. And so what that does is it opens up the possibility of really turning that property to the east of the airport into the industrial park that we've been working on for the same period of time. So it seems like it's a possibility for this all to come together. And if the CDBG can help us do that, that would be beautiful.
Well, I believe
Viable piece of
City Manager Uhas is talking about a different great potential program we could look into for something like
Oh,
that.
okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, right, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
As well. But let's take that opportunity to go back to this round 2 and 3. Are we being asked to, there's a lot of technical parts to it, asked to approve programs for it, or to just move forward with it with various programs being possible programs we could allocate the funds for?
Well, and so technically right now, there's nothing that council needs to do. But if you do want to voice any opinions, I don't think it's maybe beneficial right now to do that, because I'm not sure exactly how we can do it, if we are allowed to put multiple programs within our resolution, or if we do need to pick one program.
That would clearly make a huge difference relative to the amount.
Yeah, so that's why I think I just giving information basically right now.
Okay, thank you. Are there more questions? There's a lot to digest here.
I'm good.
Seeing none, I'll open this item up for public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment, you can go to the participants tab and click the raise your hand button, or hit *9 if you're phoning in.
I do not see any raised hands.
All right, seeing none, I'll now close the public comment. Is there any additional comments on this item from council? Blake, Todd, thank you for your work.
Yeah, you bet. I just wanted to point out and to say thank you to Alex and Quentin, who have been instrumental in all of this. So just
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
All right, I believe we're ready to move on to our next item. New business. We'll begin with item A, Travelers Row vacation request.
Let's find Rico.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. This is a proposed, proposed vacation of right-of-way, a portion of right-of-way adjacent to the Travelers Hotel building along Shasta Avenue. So it's a, so it's the request is being made by Western States Real Estate. So we've got Nick Riddle representing that organization he's the managing engineer for the Travelers project, and he's also representing Western States in this discussion, should you have any questions for him tonight. But the request is largely being made in order to have private property owner utilization of a portion of the right-of-way for the benefit of future occupants of the Travelers. If you're familiar with this area, it's only about 7.5 feet by 100 feet, a little over 100 feet, but like 100.3 or something. So it's an area that is, if you're looking at it from Shasta Avenue, either it's the entranceway into the second-story building with, there's a little tree there and some grass, or on the uphill side of that, it actually drops down to below grade, and then just to the, I guess, north of that second-story entrance, it again drops down below grade and is the area between the guardrail for Shasta Avenue and the building. So the building is built right to the property line, and in the future, they may need to. We hope they'll have a restaurant in there. They may need to bring in propane tanks to have out there for their business. They may need dumpsters, whatnot, for future occupants of the building. And right now, that is, again, public property. So they have requested that the city vacate it. There's nothing within that right of way that is of concern. There's no public utilities. It can't be really, serves no purpose for public passage other than for ingress and egress for the residents of the travelers. So the only kicker is we have got a power drop right there that with a service that we use for community events like railroad days and whatnot. As part of the building renovations for the travelers, they're proposing to strip off all the exterior wiring, take off the fire escapes, all that, make the building look beautiful. As part of that removal, that includes our power drop, which frankly is a great mystery how it ever got there, why we have it attached to their building and whatnot. So because of concerns that would be going away, staff and the property owners have negotiated this draft agreement that is before you tonight. That lays out the terms for basically the city vacating this, 700, I forget exactly what it is, 743 point,
42.44.
Thank you. 740, exactly. It's the small area in exchange for a new power connection that will be developed within a utility alcove, kind of across from where the fountain is right now. So, there'll be an alcove that's constructed there. Will be much closer to the public event. So we're not looking at having we're not looking to have the city council vacate the right of way right now, but basically to say, hey, this is what we've got, because we do have some concerns, and these are the terms that we've come up with. So if you are supportive of this, we've got this resolution for you to basically authorize staff to enter an agreement to abandon that right away. Now, that would still require that it come back to the city council to be vacated. And again, so you would not be vacating it tonight, but there are, it's important to know that there are specific findings that you need to make in order to be able to vacate it right away. And that's laid out really under California Streets and Highways Code, Section 8331. So it can't have been, it had to have been impassable for vehicular travel the past 5 years. And no public money could have been expended on it within the same period of time. According to the Public Works Director, nope, no money has been spent on it. And just the way it's designed, if you're familiar with it, there's no way other than people, it's really just always been utilized by people for that building. And at this point, since you have a private property right there, and the city would frankly not prefer not to have to maintain something that is not utilized by the public. Staff is looking at this and favorable of the request. If you do choose to do so, you have to make findings under the California Environmental Quality Act. Clearly, there's no potential for environmental impact here. I do apologize. Staff report said it was categorically
What did you say?
exempt.
Wait, Rico, too fast. There's no
Sorry.
what?
There
What?
is no money spent,
Yeah, I
and,
got
there's no
that
way
part.
and there's no way to get through there. And there's no environmental impact. So if you
That's-
vacate this,
Okay, that's right.
there's no potential for an environmental impact. Simply all you're doing is, making this imaginary property line move. So, after we go through this, there would be an additional process. This is really just that first blush. Do you like the terms of the agreement? This was done through the city attorney's office and then through the project manager and myself in consultation with city manager and the city attorney and the project proponents. So again, this is exempt from CEQA. It's not categorically exempt, but it is exempt from CEQA. And there is a resolution that is in your staff report that kind of lays out as attachments all of the terms of that agreement and the exhibits for it. And I believe that within the agenda packet that there's a motion on page 22, if you do support this, to allow you to approve the resolution for the city manager to enter into an agreement with the property owners. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Rico, you said that Alex, I guess he's the boss. Is he on the line?
I think you're actually, so the owner of the building is not on the line, but representing the owners, Greg Menges is the managing member of the LLC, but they have their project manager, Nick Riddle, with Mount Shasta Engineering on the line.
Who am I talking to?
Nick.
So
And
I have
he's
Nick, I have Nick
uh,
available.
And I will also just note that Nick is a Dunsmuir. He doesn't live in Dunsmuir anymore, but he is a former Dunsmuir resident, grew up here.
Well, that's really good. Here's my question. To the new owners or whoever, the Travelers Building has aided and assisted the town of Dunsmuir in most events. On the side of the building is a plug or a few. And that would be for vendors and that would be for basically whatever. You guys are changing the electrical thing. Are you guys still allowing an outside plug that can be used? And are you supportive of for like events, for all the at railroad days, Pine Street's loaded and they all plug into the back corner of the Travelers. I was just wondering if the new owners of the Travelers in going forward are supportive of events that are going to be happening on Pine Street all the way around them. You know, railroad days, the what was that thing called? The steampunk. All the events that happen, but they've always plugged into the back corner of that Travelers, and that's where I'm worried about. You there? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Well, Nick? Was that who I was talking to, Nick?
1 second. So I'm unmuting Rico. He got muted.
Oh, he's gonna be mad.
There we go.
Juliana just got a text. Yes,
Yep.
I'm muted. Sorry. Yeah, so absolutely, that's the whole intent here. That's exactly what we're trying to protect is that power source for community events. And the property owners are absolutely 100% amenable to having us maintain that power source for those community events. So that is really what is going to be going in that utility alcove. We're simply taking the old equipment down, and they're going to provide us with new equipment in that alcove with an easement to access it. Under the terms of the agreement, it would only be city staff or a licensed contractor that was able to utilize that space. We don't want people, we just don't want the public having access to the power source for the entire building.
Correct.
Yeah.
Why not?
Hey, that's on that note, I'm willing to make a motion after public comment.
Well, actually, Councilman Arth has had his hand raised for some time now. Sorry about that, Councilman Arth.
Well, my question is simply what happens if the project is not completed? Is this an irrevocable act by the city, or is it contingent on the renovation of the building within the time frame mutually understood between the city and Western States Real Estate LLC?
So I'm not sure if I understood. I apologize, Peter. I'm not sure I understood your question. I think I do. So is this enforceable if, say, they pull the equipment off and then they go belly up?
Yeah, no,
Can we get our property back for failure for them to have fulfilled their end of the agreement?
Exactly. We're giving them more or less a gift of 743 square feet of public property. And we do so with the understanding they're going to redevelop that now empty building on a schedule that is understood.
Yep.
Yep. So whether or not this is enforceable, that would be certainly a question for your city attorney, but that was the intent for this. Frankly, in reality, in the old days, and I'm not saying that this is how it should be done, But in the old days, I'm quite certain this would have been done with a handshake saying, oh, you're going to take our equipment off? Because frankly, I don't know what right we have to that equipment on their building. And it's very kind that they've hosted us all this time. And so in the old days, I think we'd probably say, thank you very much, for, I understand you want to remove this, here, just make sure you replace it when you, and okay, we'll take care of you, don't worry. But
Nail on the head, Rico.
Yeah,
Nail on the head.
But I, certainly don't recommend that we do that, which is the reason we have this agreement that was drafted by the city attorney. And at no point did the city attorney raise that red flag to me. What do we do if we get there? I don't know. Can we claim this land back for? Yeah, I assume absolutely we could get the land back through court action if it required court action. I assume that if they did, go belly up, they would simply say, well, we're going to deed the property back to you. They would be certainly getting a letter from the city attorney to that effect.
Can we put a clause to that in the contract?
Well, I think that is the whole point of having the agreement.
Yeah, that's what the agreement is, with the city attorney having looked at it.
Yeah, it requires them to provide us this, that is the whole purpose, is we're saying, hey, we will vacate this and you will do this. Failure of either party to fulfill the terms of the agreement could be enforced through, I presume, through the order of a court.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. Basically, this is a quid pro quo, but if the building isn't completed within a certain time, then the property reverts to the city.
Peter's right.
Councilman Arth, I think the missing piece here is it's not contingent on the building being fully renovated, but merely the new electrical utility area being fully installed.
Correct. So when we talked about the phasing of this project, what we looked at is this will be done with, I believe, and Nick can certainly talk more about this, but my assumption here would be that, they're probably there may be multiple final maps for this subdivision project, for this condominium conversion. But my assumption here is that they're going to want, if they do phase their final map, they're going to want to get their ground floor and first floor done
right now.
First. Yeah. Well, sooner than later. So their power is critical for that entire building project. So the power should be one of the very first things that utility alcove well, aside from, I'm sure they've got many structural renovations to do, but that power, then I know they've probably got temporary power there now, but that power will be critical before they have any future tenants in the building. So I do expect that will be one of the first things, and they can talk to that more.
Rico, can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I apologize if you couldn't last time. I wasn't sure. But yeah, if I could make just respond to this in in all practicality, Peter and the rest of the council. So essentially what we're doing is we're agreeing along with the request to vacate the right of way, which in and of itself doesn't require this specific type of arrangement, to make sure that the power not only is relocated into the new meter room where the new power service has to go, because you cannot power this new building by overhead, because that's not allowed by the utility. But we're also agreeing to maintain the existing location. So until such a time, and we tried to craft the agreement to where, the existing service on the back wall would remain in service until, it's cut over and hot in that utility alcove. And at that time, the city would actually take over ownership of a new meter, a new account with PacifiCorp, and the same number of receptacles, a conduit over there, just right within a small little architectural security fence. So, you know, the city and the representatives would be able to unlock the security gate, you know, whenever you have railroad days or any other city function, and, you know, run the cords the same way they've been done for years on the back corner by the ADA curb ramp, you know. So so that was how that was negotiated. So the city would not be without power at any one point. You know, that power is going to have to be turned on in order to get our first certificate of occupancy. So regardless of whatever happens, that's going to be, like Rico said, one of the first things that gets done. You know, along with recording the final map and a lot of other things. As far as the right-of-way disposition back there, I think going towards Peter's thoughts and comments, you know, the right-of-way vacation, it is reverting to the private property, which ultimately, you know, may have technically, you know, rights down to the center line. You know, however, the public owns that, or they have rights to use it for public purposes, which is the nature of the public right-of-way. However, that area that we're requesting to, really we're clearing up, we're taking care of this existing, you know, it's more of a building issue where this area that has always been used for the benefit of the Travelers Building and the occupants and the owners, it's really never been used for any real public purposes other than this specific, you know, power service.
You're right.
And we're simply trying to with all of the other capital investment being spent on this building to renovate it, to clean it up, to improve it, to make it, you know, to return it to what it maybe once was, or to what it's going to be. This was just something that I noticed, and I talked to the applicant or the owners about it, and it makes sense just to resolve this issue along with the rest of the building. I mean, nobody would have done it, to be honest with you, in the past unless they were doing something like this, because, you know, you do have to spend some money just to figure out how to do it, how to go about it, to pay for the administration and everything to do it. When in all intents and purposes, the building may have always had prescriptive rights. You know, if somebody tried to tell us or tell the owners that they couldn't keep their trash bin on city property, well, you know, been there forever. So I think really it's just resolving this in a reasonable manner right now. Now's the time to do it, or it's never going to get done. The city will, like Rico said, never use that for public purposes. It just by what it is and the grades and, you know, everything that's there. It's not, the sidewalk is beyond what we're asking to revert back to private property. So, you know, ultimately, I don't know that the city would even want it back. To respond to your question, Peter, if something may happen to the business owners, the power is going to be there. It's always going to be on. Possibly they shut the power down to the building, but they could still leave the city meter on. So, for all intents and purposes, that power will, in my opinion, always be available. But I don't know why the city would, you know, particularly even want that area back, you know, want their maintenance responsibility. Like Rico said, really it's just resolving an existing, I don't want to say non-conforming, but it's an existing disposition of property that really should be changed back to private property ownership, because that's what it's always been used for. So I'll send it back to you. I hope that touches base from my perspective.
Thank you, Nick. Councilman Arth, does that explain it better?
Well, I don't mean to belabor the point, and you know, Nick is a very good advocate for whomever his clients are. I'm simply trying to make sure, whether we're talking about the economic development of the downtown or the value of property owned by the citizens, it needs to be mutually beneficial. And this sort of seems like at the beginning of the renovation process, we're handing over the right of way. If I were doing it, I would do it differently to assure that the city and its residents and the other businesses get the benefit of the bargain. But I don't have strong feelings about it.
If I just might add, I did ask Public Works about this, whether, how they feel, I mean, because again, they have to maintain it, right? And I look at it, I go, well, what is the public benefit to this right away? And I really honestly don't see any. And I do agree with what Nick said about the whole prescriptive argument being there. And the answer from Public Works is, yeah, we don't want it. It's just more for us to maintain. It's more cost and what benefit. So we're just happy to kind of clear this, from staff's perspective. Happy to clear this up, to just go, look, it really is, the space really is for the sole benefit of the Travelers Hotel. It provides no public benefit that we, other than, there's a tree next to the entrance. That's lovely. But it really, that doesn't provide a public benefit. So if we can get if we can get the individual that owns the property and that benefits from the property to take responsibility for that and
Hell
future
yeah.
maintenance of it, it's a 100% win for both sides. So staff is, again, this is city property, and it is at the discretion of the city council. And I understand, I respect Councilmember Czar's concerns about ensuring that we're not giving away public property. In this regard, I really think that this is a safe one. If you had asked me on some other properties that have been up for discussion about going away, I might have told you something different than the direction you went. But in this one, I really think that this, this, having looked at it, stood there and kind of gone, all right, it's below grade. It has no value. Let's clear this up.
And
All right, thank you.
Is just is part of this is it's kind of a small token gesture in support of a major economic development project for the city that we want to see happen. It's removing a hurdle.
That's the way I think we need to look at it as, with this whole process of bringing the Travelers back alive and everything they're doing. This sounds like a perfect way to say thanks and Godspeed.
All right. Are there any other questions of either Mr. Riddle, our city planner?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
All right. Seeing none, I'm going to open this up for public comment. Everyone will have 3 minutes. Please raise your hand in the participants tab or hit *9 if you'd like to make public comments on Travelers Row vacation request. Don't see.
I see no hands.
All right. Seeing none, we will now close public comment. Are there any further comments on this topic or direction?
What are our options right now in terms of action? Is this an action item that we need to take on, or can we just look at this as information?
Yeah, I believe
There's a motion.
We could either approve a resolution, or we could reject it, or we could table the item.
So on page 22, I can go ahead. I'm good with this. I motion that the city council of the city of Dunsmuir make the finding that the proposed project would not have a significant adverse effect on the environment, that we adopt the recommended CEQA exemption, and that we adopt resolution PC 2021-03 authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Western States Real Estate LLC to vacate a portion of the Shasta Avenue public right-of-way adjacent to 5815 Dunsmuir Avenue.
Thank you. Councilmember Lucchese, I just want to apologize. Just to amend that motion briefly, the resolution that should not have a PC in that. I apologize. That was my
PCR.
fault. There are too many stupid little nitnoid mistakes in this staff report, and I apologize for a type A personality. It burns me. I apologize. I was scrambling that day, and I apologize. There's a PC in there, but not in your actual resolution.
It's okay. I kind of stuttered on that for a second, but I'm okay to friendly amend to say resolution CC 2021-03.
And I second that motion.
Seconded by Councilmember Deutsch. Is there any discussion of the motion at hand? All right, seeing none, I'll move into a roll call vote. Councilman Deutsch.
Aye.
Councilman Arth.
Is this just on the CEQA exemption or the resolution as well?
It's both.
Yes, everything.
I will abstain.
Oh, my God.
Please. No comments. Councilman Keisler.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lucchese.
Aye.
And myself is also an aye. Motion carries. 4 in favor, 1 abstention. Thank you so much, Mr. Riddle. While we have you on, if you wouldn't mind, I know we're very curious, and if you're not allowed to share, I understand. Could you share with us a general description of the hoped for time frame on this project from the organization you represent?
Yeah, of course. And, I would like to, emphasize that, the owners are thankful of your support and your vote for this. They certainly have always expressed to me as their engineering representative that they want to partner with the city. They want to bring economic development and in the restoration of this building, I think for everybody's best interest. So, I'll say thank you for them. And about the timeline, we are working right now to submit the final construction documents, hopefully the first week of March. So we're probably maybe 2 weeks or so away from getting the plans into the building department. Ultimately, it's going to take maybe a month or two at the most. I don't see it taking much longer than 2 months to get them their building permit. And, long story short, it's going to be a fairly heavy load getting the entire renovation completed. That, like Rico said, they're likely going to file or phase out the construction to get, possibly they're going to take care of the structural that has to get taken care of. But they may open up maybe possibly the ground floor and one second floor of residential units first. I'm not sure. They could do the whole thing if they take it on aggressively. This could be a 2-year project, depending on how they take it on. So, they still do have, in all honesty, a lot of demolition work to do. And, there's going to be some construction engineering once they start uncovering a lot of stuff that we haven't been able to look at yet. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we're just taking this one step at a time and looking forward to keeping it moving for everybody involved.
I might say that the guy you got running that job is kicking butt. That Ryan guy, he's doing a good job.
Ryan Mangrum should have more people, but he's doing the work of more than one person. I guarantee that.
I hope you got a bonus for that boy when it's all over.
All right. Thank you so much for your presence tonight. We appreciate it.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, before we lose Nick.
Yeah.
Nick, are you
Peter.
still there?
Yeah, Peter, you there?
Yeah, it would make me a lot happier as a resident of the historic district and a business owner if perhaps you could remove the plastic that you could see through and all the rubble from the demolition on the first floor, and maybe have the owners put up a blow up of the plans or something that indicates that this is not a dead building that's falling down.
Like one of those coming soon.
Well,
yeah,
it's a very,
certainly.
it's an exciting development for the city, but you can't tell it looking at the building.
Yeah, I know. I've seen what you've done with your buildings with some of the historic photos, so it makes sense. I would love to, we've already got, some plans. They are going to, once they get their building permit, unlock additional capital funding. So their demolition is going to really, take hold, and they're going to start making much faster progress with that, I'm thinking. So yeah, I'll definitely run that by them, and I'm sure we could put, that and possibly a couple other neat things put together. I'm sure we can
Yeah,
come up with
Nick,
something.
one of the things they did in Etna when they had several buildings that were empty was to have an artist come in and paint pictures on the wall, on the window from the back that looked like there were people in there enjoying themselves. So that might be something for them to consider also.
Hey, Nick, just a good architectural rendering, I think, would do the trick.
Let's say that again. A good architectural what?
Rendering. I mean, I know you guys. I know you guys
people I know. I'll call some people I know. Those things don't just happen. I know that.
No, but you guys, I've seen it. You guys have a rendering of what's coming. So
Yeah, the planning commission documents.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll think of something. I think I'd like to have some historical records in there too. We found some stuff, or I found some stuff, early on in the project that we might be able to blow up and print out of our office. So we'll figure something out.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Riddle. We appreciate you here tonight.
By the way, Nick, welcome to Dunsmuir.
Oh man, I've lived there many a times. I love it down there. Don't get me wrong. It was fun listening to the whole council meeting today. I don't get a chance. I don't have time.
Well, we're all willing to help you and work with you. So keep that in mind.
Thank you all.
All right, have a good night. We'll move on to new business item B.
And
Economic
Mr.
development.
Mayor, I apologize. If you're done with me, I'm going to stop wasting your money too.
There you go, Rico. Get out of here.
Rico. Have a good night.
Thank you all. Good night.
All right, we'll move forward into economic development discussion. We have a good staff report here, kind of outline where we've been so far. Councilman Lucchese, would you like to help introduce it?
Yeah, thank you. So the main thing is I was going to come back with a couple of different recommendations for committee structure. What I did instead was, based on our conversation last time, we don't really seem to be very unified on what we'd like to see for economic development. And so I kind of took a step back for a second and just kind of wanted to have an exercise of just kind of listening to the other council members and members of the public on what we're looking to do and the direction that we want to take, because it's not going to be very helpful to form a committee when we as a council are split on, our opinions of working with other agencies, of, what types of tasks we're looking to do, what we're going to be assigning to this committee. And economic development is a very, very broad topic area for planning. I mean, we can go into specific business development, we can go into community development, improving different aspects of that. So I think it's just good to kind of take a step back and talk a little bit more amongst ourselves and the public to get a good, clear direction of what economic development we need in the city. So, and again, the other big thing too is, do we need to support our current businesses and retain them? Are we looking to focus on attracting businesses? What kind of businesses do you want to attract? Do you want to support local? Do you want a large scale company coming in? Things like that. So I think we just kind of need to explore that. And this is the purpose of this item for today. So the things that were previously discussed is there's a possible need for a coordinated economic development plan or strategy, open communication with business owners, marketing of the downtown and businesses, and then management of special events. Those were the 4 specific ones that came up in the last meeting, so we can continue to talk about those. And so one of the things I did was kind of outline just a really simple tool, which is a SWOT analysis, which looks at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the kind of differences to know about these things is strengths and weaknesses look at existing characteristics of the city, and then opportunities and threats look at things outside of the city's economy. So for example, a threat to the city's economy would be a wildfire breaking out nearby and causing smoke, which would deter tourists. So that's something that is not inside the city's economy, or that's not something the city can necessarily control, but it is a threat to our economy, where an existing characteristic for like a strength would be we have a very strong arts community that we could build upon more with the Siskiyou Art Museum and the nonprofit. So those are just kind of some of the things we can work through as we discuss, is kind of identifying these strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. The next thing is really talking about identifying, defining characteristics of Dunsmuir's economy. So
Miss
a really good
Juliana,
example.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
ask a question? Because we've had smoke that has, I mean, devastated our whole industry 3 out of 4 years.
Yeah.
And I really kind of didn't even realize that smoke is part of economic development. I mean, this is, I apologize for interrupting. I just was like, that's a, you know, you mentioned smoke. And it's like, wow, slap in the face. Out of the last 4 years, 3 of those years have been either fire, smoke, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I was
So
ready
it's just,
to go for 3 weeks.
yeah, exactly. So when we really look at those opportunities and threats, those things outside of the community, you know, it could be anything. It could be COVID-19. Granted, COVID-19 it occurs less frequently than, say, a wildfire threat. So I mean, it's something we could list as a threat, but the odds of it happening again are pretty low. I mean, I think they say about every 100 years we're due for a pandemic, although it is a good point to bring up. But what these things do when we work through it, and wildfires, for example, is it identifies something that's a weakness almost in our economy as well. Try not to use the SWOT analysis words for different things. But when we look at a threat and we identify something like wildfire smoke, we then take it back and look at, okay, how is it affecting economy? It's discouraging visitors. It's really impacting public health, which impacts workers or ability to work outside if you're in construction or landscaping. So some of the ways we would tackle that threat is diversifying our economy so that we don't wholly rely on tourism as our economic driver, of trying to diversify different types of job opportunities to ensure that we have a good, you know, public health campaign around smoke threats and when you should or shouldn't go outside. There are different things we can do that would lead to economic growth eventually. So again, that's why we really kind of want to talk about, you know, economic development as this bigger item, because we could go in a lot of different directions with it. You know, natural disaster prevention could be something that bolsters or ruins your economy. So just kind of talking about those things is something we need to bring up and really kind of flesh out. So the other thing that we'd be doing is, like I said, going back to defining the characteristics of Dunsmuir's economy. I brought up the example of strengths of having, you know, the art museum, having some of these opportunities. I got an email the other day about someone interested in doing murals in the city and really building upon this artistic community. That could be a really unique defining characteristic for Dunsmuir.
Yeah.
What I've seen in other cities that have, especially smaller cities, is they like to look at some of these bigger places like the city of Palo Alto and go, you know, we want to become a tech capital as well. But that's not necessarily doable in terms of our location, the types of people and workforce that we have here, and really trying to emulate another city is not really the best economic strategy. And so when I've worked with cities in the past on economic development, especially these small towns, there are certain very unique characteristics to each small town. Everybody can tell you that Weed, Mount Shasta, McLeod, and Dunsmuir, although in very close proximity, neither of the 4 cities are the same. And so their economies are going to be different as well. So, you know, we are never going to be able to compete with Mount Shasta's spiritual tourism crystal shop market. I'm being very nice on that. Not that that's a bad thing, those things, but Mount Shasta is always going to do better at that because they have that spiritual aspect to their economy where, and again, the same thing for Weed is they have more industrial blue collar based jobs for the mill working out there. So for Dunsmuir, it's really important to kind of step back and really answer the question of what features of the city of Dunsmuir are truly unique that we could build off of and use to really move forward with an economic strategy. So I just wanted to kind of introduce the SWOT analysis and the defining characteristics as kind of a little exercise of really trying to focus this economic strategy moving forward. And again, you know, an economic strategy can be very fluid. You know, I think we could take multiple meetings on this if you guys wanted. But this is just kind of to get us as a group of 5 people kind of closer to what we're looking to do with economic development.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
One second. Yeah, and we do have Siskiyou Economic Development Council available to talk about this as well if you want to get their perspective on this.
If they would like to share, is that Alex McBride?
And Corey.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, as a person who's been working economic development for 5 years, I'd like to kind of give you a sense of what the view that I have as to what the overall is when we get to that point.
Okay. We'll have that opportunity.
This is Alex McBride. I'm just gonna jump in if that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different strategies, you know, right now there's a lot of talk about resiliency. Our team obviously provides like a handful of things, you know, just off the cuff, business services. We have a lot of really good existing relationships with some of the businesses in Dunsmuir. We leverage our MOU dollars. We're actually developing, you know, kind of actually the marketing and attraction piece that you spoke about earlier, Juliana. And really, we're kind of here to listen to, you know, what does the council see as the vision? What are things, you know, that maybe our work can coordinate on, or, you know, some sort of support and partnership. You know, whatever you guys think is important, you know, we want to be there as a good partner and as a supporter of that work. And, you know, we're happy to jump in on any of these economic development discussions, you know, here, now, and in the future. So anything we can do to assist, you know, I'm really kind of sitting here hoping to learn a little bit more about what your priorities are as a council.
Thank you.
This is Corey Hayden, and I just wanted to, of course, mirror what Alex had just suggested. We have a very positive relationship with the city of Dunsmuir and Todd as well, and good communication. And so we're here to help support and assist in your priorities. And so thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I agree with Alex. We're here in a listening role. And we do have a working strategy that has been developed and that we have used for several years. And I'm glad to share that document and a welcome letter with all members of council over the next 2 weeks. And you can feel free to pull some language or bullet points out of that document that might assist in your conversation and your planning.
Corey, before you go, could you also talk about the SRN and how that fits into economic development revitalization?
Yeah, I will, Bruce. I heard you guys talk about events, and I know events are really important to communities. Sometimes we put that in that pocket of community development. So we might focus on economic and community development being the events portion of that. And so there are leaders in all communities in Siskiyou County who have been trained and historically trained in how downtown communities can best leverage their existing assets to support events and walkability and open for business. And so Bruce is part of that 28-person network across Siskiyou County where the individual towns work together and learn from each other and try to implement best practices. So thanks for mentioning that, Bruce.
Thanks, Corey.
Actually, can I jump back in on that, Corey? I'm going to piggyback on Corey now a little bit and, you know, just mention that we have that SRN network. And so a lot of the community facing aspects of economic development. But I think it's also fair to mention that we do meetings with all the city managers And, we talk about economic development as a region. Are there specific strategies we can pursue? One, being key and pretty prominent, I think lately, is the CDBG and the small business assistance, uniting all those city managers and, looking at economic development in a region, because maybe not every small city has all the funds to implement these, bigger projects, but, creating a holistic and a bigger regional view, anything really in that sphere, from the public, to the city management, to our region as a whole. We're here to be your team. So anyway, just wanted to add that in.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Miss Corey, Miss Alex, I want to thank you for your time and dedication. I have questions. I was wondering if I could give you my phone number, 925-9365. Please call me tomorrow.
Will do.
Again, thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate the leadership, and really having these open discussions are really invaluable to our team. So thanks for hosting this opportunity.
I have some questions tomorrow, so please call me. Thank you.
Will do.
All right. Getting back to the report, thank you so much, Siskiyou County Economic Development, Corey and Alex, for joining the conversation. Looks like what we're kind of trying to do here tonight is, are we supposed to go through this SWOT analysis tonight, or maybe just discuss what we'd like to do and whether this is something we're interested in pursuing? I myself am in favor of this process, but I'd also like to discuss the possibility of maybe having an ad hoc, specifically just engage with pulling the business community on where they would like to see this go. It fits in perfectly with the prior conversation with the bid. If that's something we're ever able to do, it's going to require a better working relationship of the business community as a whole.
Mr. Mayor,
manager, I wholeheartedly, want to see this happen.
I think that due to time, I think that we should, I'd like to make a motion that we have a special meeting before the meeting next week, just to discuss this. We should set a time, an hour before the meeting, bring these same people back to answer any questions, and establish what it is that we want to go before we go to an ad hoc.
Yeah, I think that that seems like a good idea. I do think that to go through this whole process, it would be very good to have a meeting, maybe not in the same format as a city council meeting, some sort of town hall, to discuss it. We can make it a regular meeting so all city councilors could be present if we wanted to do that, but I think that might be a good way to do it.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, it just needs to be done a meeting before so we can establish some guidelines and where we want to go.
Well, I believe the ad hoc discussed here is just simply, it'd be a very short mission. 2 city councilors are given the specific task of talking and maybe having a more uniform survey, but really reaching as many people involved in Dunsmuir's economy as possible, particularly on the business ownership end, getting their opinion. And I think that, it's essentially just 2 people volunteering to work together to gather all the info.
Thank you, sir.
So I do see some benefit to having it be 2, because if we just leave it to all of us, well, we're already at that point where we all have a great deal of experience with the businesses in town and business owners, and all of our citizens, but more of a targeted mission and not just general knowledge. And if we all think, oh, I only have to pull, a fifth of the work, we'll be less motivated than if, hey, we're 2 people who have the time to go out and do this right now. It'd be a good first step, both for, the general path for economic development that we need to develop eventually. And then later on, of course, for potentially starting up the bid. If we find out that, within a year, it looks like we can get 75% of business owners to support something being done to the downtown like this, it'll be totally different. So I do think that is a possible next step. But I'd be interested, since Juliana Lucchesi, you did so much research for this, and what your perspective on next steps would be.
Sure. Do you want to take public comment now or a little bit later? Because I do have one person who's been wanting to make a comment.
I believe we can make public comment now as long as there's no more questions about the actual report and the swap process.
Okay. All right.
Let me open it up to public comment real quick. Mr. Tassi, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the opportunity again. This is Ahmed Tassi. I live on 4019 Forest Lane. Thank you very much to Councilwoman Lucchesi, because she is right. Economic development is a very wide topic. And Mr. Mayor, also establishing an ad hoc committee would be a very good idea. But at the same time, I have another solution to bring it to the table. If you all noticed, most of the topic that we discussed tonight, either within the economic development discussion or somehow related to it. And the way we can organize this, perhaps, for instance, historic district bit, we can actually put the economic development on the locations. For instance, for economic development in downtown of Dunsmuir, historic district, BID could be responsible for that. If there's going to be any economic development in mud property, perhaps that could be another committee who can, which can handle that. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tassi. We appreciate your input. Is there any other public comment at this time?
I do not see any other hands, and I don't see anybody in the chat wanting to jump on here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tassi. We appreciate that. We'll now close public comment on
Matthew?
discussion. Yes?
Yeah, can I take this opportunity to put in my thoughts on this?
Well, I believe we're still waiting to hear from City Manager Juhas. If he has thoughts for it, I wanted him to be able to finish his thoughts, but after that, certainly.
Anything that brings, so I think the idea at some point of an ad hoc committee being pulled together is great. I think that before we do that, I think we need to pull together a more of a listening session where we as a leader kind of lead the discussion of what we are looking for business owners, what kind of information we're looking for them to provide it and pull out what they would like to see. And then, and ultimately, my desire is to form that ad hoc committee to pick up where the chamber in the city of Dunsmuir, which is very odd use, has acted as sort of economic development. And I don't think that's the proper use of the chamber. I think what this ad hoc committee, once we learn what the businesses want out here, it's kind of our charge then to do targeted outreach and figure out who we want to reach out to based on the types of businesses that we think will fit and thrive within the community and make cold calls, frankly, or decide where we want to put messages out on social media in certain cities. Like if you want to capture people that have been up here over the summer, that now have the ability to work remotely ad infinitum, and convincing folks to come up here, and this is a great place for you to work remotely because of all the things that we have. It takes 10 people to respond to something like that. I mean, getting those kind of ideas on the table and, coming up with a focus based on, meeting with these groups and using the ad hoc committee to get at it.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable to me. Yeah, any questions for City Manager at this juncture? All right, see none. Councilman Deutsch, I know you've been wanting to share your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. The philosophy that I've been working under as the Economic Development Chair for the last 5 years has been the idea that on one hand, there is tourism, And tourism has to be developed and has to be nurtured. And the venue for that has been through the Siskiyou Revitalization Network. It's a group of people that come together and figure out best ways of getting tourists into the town and best ways of supporting the individual businesses. So as far as economic development and the tourism side, that is the avenue that we've been pursuing. As far as the larger picture, the thing I said at the very beginning when I ran back in 2016 and ran in 2020 is that this economy can no longer continue to last as simply a tourism-based economy. And it's because of the smoke and the fires and everything else. And so that's the reason I have been so laser focused on the airport, because the airport is the one thing that we have that sets us apart in a very big way. And the whole concept of economic development in the larger picture is to bring in businesses and small businesses and tech companies. And the idea is that's where the broadband came in, and that's where the push was for a couple of years working with CTA. And then on the other hand, it's the idea that the property out there east of the airport, once it's got water, once it's got sewer, and once the airport runway is refinished, that becomes an opportunity to bring in all kinds of businesses that do rely on airports. And so the whole idea of looking at economic development in the large picture is not so much looking at how do we fill individual businesses, but looking at how do we create an environment for a large change in our economics. And when Richard Dingus, working with somebody who was an expert on this, looked at bringing in UPS or FedEx, they were talking about the opportunity, if done right, that we could end up with $3 million of revenue off that airport industrial park per year. $3 million was their top figure, and that's based on expertise. So the whole idea of looking at economic development is to break it down into one hand, how do we support tourism? And on the other hand, how do we attract small and businesses and an industrial park out there? And beyond that, Matthew and I had talked with Todd and came up with a kind of a concept where it was an ad hoc that was based upon the idea that whenever the city manager found an opportunity or something to work on, could call together the committee, could work together with Economic Development Council and do all those kind of things. And so it would be based upon when the city manager thinks it's right for us to come together to talk about a particular issue. So those are my thoughts on the whole thing. And this is what I've been working on for the time I've been on the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Deutsch. I would like to go back to what city manager proposed as a first steps in this, which is essentially we need to reach out to everyone. It kind of falls in line with this report. It looks as if we're considering next steps. It's, do we hold a meeting and further analyze our thoughts on economic development, or do we reach out, get more information, and then do that next step? Is there any thoughts on that particular question of next?
I'd have to concur with
steps?
your second assessment to reach out and do the next step.
Okay, what manner of reaching out would the council like to consider?
Well, that's where, in reading this thing, it's been mentioned that it's kind of on us as council members to go out and talk to our people.
Mm-hmm.
And let's try and bring them all to the table.
But I do think we need to do it in an organized way, where
Yeah,
there's
that's
a
what I
list
mean, Matthew.
list of people that need it, need to be called or emailed, etc.
So
I mean, it
Councilmember
can be
Ark has
done.
his hand up.
Councilmember Ark?
Well, this is Business Improvement District 2.0. That is, there is very poor communication. Bullet number 2, open communication with business owners, has not existed for several years. And I have to say that I'm extremely impressed with the skills of former Mayor Bryce Craig, who was very effective in leading this community through the divisive discussion around the cannabis economy. And having gone to a number of meetings and watched his skill set, at this point, he's the only surviving tech business in Dunsmuir that I'm aware of. His skills in presentation and organization are really strong. So as a matter of leadership, Mr. Mayor, I would ask that you get a hold of Bryce, get a hold of Mark Rowley and get a hold of David Clarno and make sure they are going to be presenters. The five of us talking to each other is not a good use of our time. So I agree with the city manager and council member Lucchese that throwing together a committee, I don't see any tangible products from our economic development committee. And we have to think about special events. How are we going to promote the city in what remains of this year as well as next year? I have it on very good authority that the chamber board is disorganized and we should expect very little, if anything, from the Dunsmuir Chamber of Commerce. That's a train. So I hope we treat this with a matter of urgency. And you can't appreciate, unless you're really involved, how difficult it is to be part of the business community in this city. I've said it 100 times, and I will keep saying it until we develop a partnership with the business community.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Arth. We appreciate that as well. So I'm hearing kind of a general consensus that we reach out to the business community and that we at some point hold a special meeting where we can focus on this topic without any other distractions. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was going to recommend, I think the listening session's a really good idea. I think maybe having 1 or 2 listening sessions at 2 different times of day to make sure we try and accommodate people's schedules would be really good. But I think maybe giving it a couple of weeks so that we can make sure to get like a flyer out and we get the word out. But I think definitely having the city manager maybe look at a couple of different dates would be good. And then I can put together a flyer pretty quickly for that. So that would be my suggestion. I think the listening session would be great, but I think it maybe taking a week or 2 to make sure people know and can put it in their schedules is going to be important too.
Absolutely.
Councilman Arth and Councilman Deutsch, would you guys possibly be able to take on working more specifically to bring in a lot of the business community? I know one of you is a part of it. The other one's been working on it diligently for 5 years. And if you guys have the time, I think you guys might be the best positioned, if you're open to it, to rounding up even more people for these special listening meetings.
I mean, I am behind approximately 12 businesses in Dunsmuir, profit and nonprofit. My hesitation is that people will say, oh, Peter's got a conflict of interest. So if it's okay with the city attorney, I'm happy to work with those that are trying to open and keep businesses open in Dunsmuir.
Thank you,
You
Peter.
will work on a part of that process as well.
Thank you, Bruce.
And this is not like the official committee thing. This is just
No, I understand.
work with the flyers, and Juliana works so hard in all these other projects, but she'll make the flyer. And if you guys could help with the groundwork of making sure everyone in the next 3 weeks, once we get that, knows that this is something we're focused on and trying to work on, I think it would be very, very helpful. I really appreciate.
I believe we all can.
We all will, yeah. Definitely.
One thing I can add to this is that several months ago, the chamber came up with an updated list of all the different businesses in town. So I can track that down and share that so that we have a list that we can work off of.
Cool.
Thank you.
See, we're working together. This is great.
All right, so is there official motion on this, or I guess
I think we've got marching orders.
marching orders? Okay, direction was given.
There you go.
All right, so I think we're complete with this topic, unless you have anything further, City Manager.
No, I think we like ditto to Juliana, not to mimic Rush Limbaugh or anything, but ditto.
All right, I believe we're moving on to our future agenda items. We do have a number of items that are working their way through, just things like CDBG and stuff. I know those will have regular updates. I do have a number of things already in the works that may or may not be ready. And I'm sure City Manager has a number as well. I know we're getting close to solid waste negotiations. That's probably 1 or 2 meetings out.
I can't, if we're gonna get there, but my goal, and I'm pushing staff to come up with our recommendation for the next council meeting. If it isn't done, it will absolutely be at the next.
Okay, thank you. I know that's a huge little project coming up. Then the other one, and I believe this was discussed at the last meeting from reading the minutes, but where are we at with the rate study? Is that fully
I was just going to bring that up. I can tell you on that. Dave and I are the two members on that, and
Yeah,
we've
I saw
already had our
that.
and we've already had our first meeting, and so it was very productive. We got through it in about a half an hour, and we basically kind of set the tone for how we're moving forward. And right now, Paul Reuter with PACE is bringing together the data that we'll work on in our first meeting. That'll be a public meeting in about a month, I believe, maybe a little bit shorter, but that's kind of the status we're at with that project.
It's about a month.
All right, thank you. Are there any other future agenda items to bring up at this point? Well, there are a number of things that from the audit, the Finance Committee, I'm sure, is working and considering, and some of them are on Blake and Todd's plate, and those I think will eventually make their way to council for consideration.
Yeah, I think we should be able to have the audit for the next meeting. We did approve the audit and the recommendations at the last Finance Committee meeting, but that was on Tuesday this week, so we weren't able to get it on this agenda.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. So no more future agenda items. If you have any further ones, you can always email them to myself or Todd. Look forward to seeing you guys at the next meeting.
All right.
But Mr.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yes.
Before we adjourn, I would like to one more time extend this council's condolences to the Olson family. Tragic thing. You guys are on our prayers. You're in our hearts. God bless.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Big Dave.
All right.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn and a second.
Third.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Good meeting. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Motion carries.
Stay safe.
Wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Matt.
Todd. Thank you, Blake.
Good night.